I wish that was an alcoholic beverage. Since my last video, I have kind of fallen down this rabbit hole of just so many things. I've done so much research about my dad because it's all I think about from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. I am constantly on my computer looking up things that I'm thinking, looking up things that I think could relate to him. Just anything and everything that I have, I've been researching to try and find more about him. So I've been trying to contact his best friend from back in the day that my aunt mentioned to me. I found his Facebook page, I messaged him, I haven't heard back from him. Editing Michelle here. I actually have an update on this. I ended up finding his oldest son and sent him a message on Facebook asking if he was related to my dad's friend, and he said yes, that was his dad. So I gave him my name, my dad's name, and my phone number, and actually while I was editing this, he just messaged me back on Facebook and said that he talked to his dad. His dad does remember my dad, and he will be giving me a call sometime. I don't know when, so I'll have to update when that happens. Cool. I joined high school alumni communities, other groups for his high school alumni, groups for his military, joined websites for his military. I contacted the Pasco County Sheriff's Office to try and get records of his death. And when I spoke with the lady, she asked, like, well, because I said, I was like, my dad died when I was 2. I'm trying to find out some more information about him. And she's like, well, how did he die? And I was like, he was electrocuted by a microwave. And she was like, oh, you don't hear that every day. And I was like, yeah, I know. I was like, but it happened in 1988. I was like, I'm just kind of hoping that someone has something about it. But she told me that back in 1988, the police didn't come out for things like that. They would only come out for crimes that were actually committed. So I was like, okay. She goes, not many people know this, but if EMS and fire rescue came out, like, they have their own records and they would be able to see if they had something. I was like, well, I know the ambulance came out because the ambulance came to take him to the hospital. And she was like, yeah, I would call them to see if they have records. And I was like, okay. So then I call the EMS and fire rescue, and they say they may have the files, but because it's from 1988, they don't have access to it. So then they directed me to archive records. So I called them, spoke with the lady, gave her the whole spiel. She was like, yeah, she's like, most likely we probably don't have anything dating that far back. I was like, all right, it's okay. Like, it was a long shot. I just figured. I was like, I'm just trying to find out anything about him. So she was like, well, what's his name? So I told her his name is Michael Leroy Pugh. She asked for his date of birth, gave the date of birth. And she was like, the only thing that I see coming up for your father is in 1986, he was given a citation for drinking an alcoholic beverage on Green Key Beach. He paid a fine of $131, and that was it. So I guess it's kind of good to know that my dad doesn't have a record. I mean, that makes me happy. I've been falling down these rabbit holes every day for the past week and not getting much work done because I keep doing this. But I ended up having conversations with my grandpa and my stepdad Sal, and more conversations with my Aunt Tina and Aunt Marty. And I've been searching for things to try and find people who knew him that could tell me stories about him. It's been all dead ends. The things that I've been told, my mind was having a hard time comprehending. I was finding out all these things about my mom that were completely shocking, which is going to be a separate video on its own. But I wanted to start off where we left off in the last video. I found the original articles that were written about my dad. I dug through my shed to find this, and I also found a whole bunch of stuff from high school and things like that that if you want me to go through, I would be more than happy to go through it. Like, I haven't looked at it, but if you want me to, I will make a video about all the stuff that I wrote in high school, because I was a fucked up kid. I was. But in the last video, I said that I was reading his obituary, and I found out that that was not his obituary. That was actually an article written about him. I did find his original obituary. I do have that in this book, so I will put it up on the screen for you to read now. And also, going through this book, I found another article that quoted my mom in it that just doesn't sit right with me. And if you watched the previous video, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't watched the previous video, please go watch that first before you continue on with this, because if not, none of this will make sense. So the article says, I looked over and saw all the sparks, she said, and then saw her husband fall backwards onto the floor. I don't think he was alive then, she said. Pugh said she ran to the neighbor's house to call emergency services, but added, I don't think there was really anything that they could do. That just doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sit right with me. But there's not much that I can do about that. So my aunt labeled my dad's obituary wrong on that Find a Grave site. So that's why I wanted to correct it here. And the last thing I said in my previous video was that the last memory I had of my dad, it might have been a lie, it might have been a trauma response, something that I made up in my head just to give myself something to hold on to. And I was really bummed that I was coming to that realization. I've been thinking about it for days since I made that video, and I found some things out that kind of validated, like that it actually happened, that it was true. So I've been thinking about a lot about what my family members would say about me posting this video and the previous video and any video going forward, because they are involved, but it doesn't revolve around them. It's my experience, the things that I'm going through, the things that I'm trying to make sense of or just get off my chest, because I feel like it's things that I can't talk to people about. So I'm just turning on the camera and just talking. But I was really worried about what family members would think, and so far, so good. My sister did call me and wanted to clear some things up, and she told me that it happened at the dining room table. It wasn't in the kitchen. So when she got home, my dad was in the ambulance, the chair was knocked over, and the microwave was on the kitchen table plugged in, and that there were black marks on the ground. And then she also told me that we did not have a phone. We never had a phone because we couldn't afford it. So that explains why my mom would run to the neighbor's house to call EMS. When she walked in, the chair was knocked over, the chair was on the ground, and the microwave was on the kitchen table plugged in. And I kept thinking about that for like a couple of days, and I asked her the question, was the microwave always on the table? Like, is that like the place where we kept it? And she replied, no. So then my question was, why would it be on the table plugged in? Like, I understand moving the microwave from the kitchen counter to the table because you'd have more room to work, but why would it be plugged in on the table? I don't know. It's just another thing that just, I don't understand. But anyway, so after the last video, we ended up picking up my stepdaughter, and we had her for the weekend. So on Friday, on our car ride home, because it's an hour-long ride from where she lives, I was telling her the crazy roller coaster ride that I've been on the past week. And I had thought about the questions that I was asking at the beginning, you know, when did they get married? When did they meet? And then all of a sudden I had like the epiphany that I should ask my stepdad, Sal. You know, he was married to my mom just before my dad. A little backstory with that is that I went down the records trail. I found when they got married, when Sal and my mom got married, I found their divorce record. I found my mom's marriage record from my dad from when she married Dave. Like, I found a lot. But, so I ended up messaging Sal on Facebook, and I said, hey, I have a couple of questions. Like, are you free or something like that? And I guess he kind of thought something was wrong, and he like messaged me back and was like, oh my god, like, are you okay? Like, what's the matter? Call me, and like gave me his phone number. So I called him, and he was like, what's the matter? And I was like, first off, I'm fine. I was like, I'm perfectly okay. I said, these questions like aren't like a state of emergency. They're just questions that I thought of. And he was like, okay. He's like, good. So before I started with him, I let him know that I was doing this blog post. I was doing the YouTube videos. This is what this is about. All this. Like, I just have a couple questions about my dad. And he was like, okay. Sal had nothing but good things to say about my dad. Like, which kind of sways me to believe that my dad was a nice guy. I don't think when he drank or dealt with like my mom's bullshit that he was a nice guy, but everyone I talked to says he was so nice. So either editing Michelle here, I didn't think anything of that while recording this video until editing it just now, where I think like that was my mom, because I was saying how my dad was a nice guy unless he was drinking or dealing with my mom's bullshit. I think she knocked the book down to be like, bitch, you're wrong. Or it was my dad saying, you're on the right path. But that was crazy because that book was just sitting on the shelf. I don't know. But I just wanted to come on here and say that. That kind of creeped me out while editing this. So everyone that I talk to always says he was so nice. So it's either he is actually really a nice guy with a mean side when he drinks, or he's just a narcissist and just wanted everyone to like him. I mean, I'm exploring all possibilities, but being his daughter, I would like to think he was nice. But honestly, I'll never know. I'll never know. So when I started asking Sal these questions, he stated that he loved my mother and he does not want to speak ill of the dead. But I told him again that I needed to know. Everyone is always saying, like, I don't want to say anything that's going to hurt your feelings, or I don't want to speak ill of the dead, or I don't, you know, but I need to know. I'm 35. I need to know. But this was just, these are things that I need to know to work through and move on from this. But is it really speaking ill of the dead if it's true? Like, am I the only one that thinks that it's not? He went on to tell me that my mom had a rough childhood growing up, which I knew, and which is why I always said she was the way that she was because of her childhood. You know, she never talked about her childhood. She never talked about growing up or the things that bothered her. And I understand that when she was growing up, mental health and shadow work and healing trauma was not a thing like it is today. And for me, though, there has to be a day where you just kind of wake up and think to yourself, I can't do this anymore. This meaning the way that you live your life, the way that you treat people, the way that you are treated. I just wish she would have done that for herself and for her kids. But my mom was a very selfish person. She only did things that would somehow benefit her, and she never wanted to be alone. She would always jump from one man to the next without hesitation. And as I said, I did some research and I found all the marriage license, the divorce records, found out some things that are not so important but are cool to know. I just asked him, I was like, I'm trying to figure out the timeline. Since I was born in 1985, that means that I'm trying to figure out when my parents got married. And knowing that my aunt told me previously when my parents got married, I wanted to see when things with Sal ended and just kind of establish a timeline so that I could say, oh, this is kind of roughly what year they met and kind of go from there. So when talking with Sal, he said that he ended things in 84. And I was like, okay, after 2 years of marriage. But then as I was doing more research, and I said I found the marriage record, he says that he remembers they got married April 13th, 1982. And the divorce record that I have says that they divorced September 4th, 1984. And that might not mean much, but like September 4th, 1984. My mom and dad got married December 14th, 1984. That's 96 days after her divorce. What I find funny though is what date is almost exactly 8 months after the day they got married. August 19th, 1985, my birthday. So they found out that they were pregnant a month earlier in November. Ew. My mom's birthday's in November. Ew. I didn't even think about that until now. So, anyway. I wish that was an alcoholic beverage. Okay. Anyway, I need to get that image out of my head. After my dad passed, she didn't wait long to move on. She didn't wait long to bring the new man around. I mean, it was so soon that the first time people met him was at my dad's funeral service / cremation. My dad died February 10th, 1988, and they had a service and cremation for him within a few days. And my grandpa and my aunt said that my mom rolled up with her new man, with her new boo, a 12-pack of beer and a beer in hand, which kind of shocked me, but also kind of didn't at the same time. Kind of seems like something, again, she would do. And that man being Dave, my mom's friend from the trailer park that we all lived in before moving to Rose Terrace. And then 2 years later, Dave became my new stepdad. Fun little, backstory. In talking with Sal, he asked me if I knew the story behind the microwave. And of course I didn't, because my mom never talked about anything like this. But he had said that my mom and dad had gotten into a fight and my dad broke our microwave. And because my dad broke the microwave, he felt really guilty and really bad for doing it. So since we didn't have a lot of money, he went to like a garage sale or an estate sale, and he bought a microwave to replace the one he had broke. But when he got home and like gave it to my mom, they found out that it didn't work. So then that like pissed my mom off even more. So my dad, being an electrician, decided to take the parts from one microwave and put them in the other to try and make at least one of them work. And in one of the articles written about him, it states that he fixed the microwave 3 weeks prior. So he got it working, but then it died again. So my last memory was real. I remember them arguing about the microwave. Like, I was so ecstatic to hear that my last memory was not made up. Like, I knew they were arguing about the microwave, or they were arguing about something, and then my mom was like, go fix the microwave. I'm not fucking crazy, y'all. Sal told me, though, that he didn't understand how someone could make another person feel so guilty about a microwave when all they were trying to do was make up for what they broke. And I said I didn't get it either, because my mom would harp on things even after you apologized and tried to fix it. I know that all too well from my childhood. But now that we've established that I'm not fucking crazy and my last memory is true, we're gonna move on to the next fucked up thing that happened in my life. This is still a continuation of my dad's story. But the next event made my mom drill into my head that my grandparents, my dad's parents, were like the worst people in the world. They were horrible people. They were the villains of our story. Because sometime after my dad's death, my grandparents came down for a visit, and as my mom says, they kidnapped me. And when she would tell me this story, if I ever got any story as a child, it was this one. This is the one that she talked about all the time. Forget the information about my dad and knowing him. This is what she wanted me to know. When she would tell me the story, she would make it seem like it was without her knowledge, and that I was up there for years and years, and like she had to like fight to get me back and like all this. So because of that whole situation, she had distanced herself and basically hid me from my grandparents. She didn't trust them anymore. I always wondered about her story because, again, as I said, she made it seem like it was years that I was up there, and I always thought, like, what took you so long to like realize that I was gone? What took you so long to come get me? And she would like never answer me. But I met up with my grandpa when he lived in Fort Lauderdale in 2016, and we were sitting on his porch, and he apologized to me for what my grandma had done. He said it then, and he still says it now. I had to do what my wife wanted. To me, that like confirmed my mom's story, but the conversation didn't go any further than that. I accepted his apology and just continued to have an amazing visit with him. So fast forward to 2021, when talking with my aunt, she said that my grandma and grandpa had permission from my mom to keep me for the summer. So for 3 months, they would be able to keep me. What my mom didn't know was that they were working to get custody of me. My aunt said somehow your mom found out and came up from Florida to Mississippi in the middle of the night and got me after being there for a month. She said that I was there long enough for them to potty train me because I wasn't potty trained at like 3.5 years old. And I said, I remember that because you guys used to make me sit on the toilet backwards, and I always thought that was fucking weird. But thinking about it now, I'm like, oh, that's because I had, hard to believe, but I had a tiny little butt as a kid, and it would fall into the toilet hole. So they made me sit backwards so I'd have something to hold on to and I wouldn't fall in. But don't worry now, guys. I sit regularly on a toilet now, just in case you were wondering. I also remember them having a thing for gold dial soap. Anytime I smell it, I get taken right back to my toilet sitting backward days in Mississippi. Memories. But when I was on the phone with my grandpa and was asking him questions about when I asked him questions about my dad, I brought up this incident, and he said, no, we did not have permission. We did not have permission from your mama. So he explained the story as they came down for a visit. They asked my mom if they could spend the day with me, buy me new clothes and all that, and my mom said yes. So they went and took me and bought me all new clothes and went back to my grandpa's brother's house in Hudson, where my grandma proceeded to change my clothes. Grandpa said that his brother Junior asked him, are you guys going somewhere? And my grandpa was like, not that I know of. Why? And he's like, well, your wife is changing the baby's clothes. And he was like, yeah, she's just putting a new outfit on her. Like, she wants her to look nice. When they left to bring me back to my mom's, Grandma said like, okay, let's go home. And he was like, okay. And she was like, he's like, home? You mean like Donna's house? And she was like, no, our home, Mississippi. And he's like, I had to do what my wife said. He's like, so I drove to Mississippi. He's like, but the whole time I'm driving, I'm like, you can't steal the baby. And your grandma's reply was, I'm not stealing a baby. I'm taking my grandchild. And Grandpa says that I was there for 35 days, and if my mom would have waited one more week, they would have had custody of me. But it still raises the question, why did it take her so long to come get me? 35 days. Why did it take so long? A part of me thinks that she was going to let my grandparents keep me. Like it was one less mouth to feed. But then I think she found out that she was going to be getting Social Security checks for her, me, my brother, and my sister. And like she was getting a little bit for herself. She would get a little bit more for my sister, a little bit more for my brother, and then a lot for me because I was the littlest. I was the toddler. And when I told my cousin like this whole story, she said that she remembered her mom, my Aunt Karen, my mom's sister, talking with her husband saying like, the baby shouldn't have to go through this. Like I want to try and get custody of her. Like she shouldn't have to go through this. But nothing came of that either. But because of this little stint that my grandparents pulled, my mom kept me from them for years. Until one time I was 15 and I got a random call on my cell phone And I answered it, and it was my Aunt Marty saying, you know, hey, we're in town and we would love to see you. And my first question was, how did you get my phone number? And she said that she got it from my sister, which my sister has had the same house phone number for like a bajillion years. So they just remembered it from memory, called, got my sister. My sister gave them my number. But she said that she wanted to come hang out and come see me. And I was like, I don't know, like I'll have to ask my mom. I'm like, so I'll call you back. So I hang up, I call my mom at work. I'm like, hey, Aunt Marty just called me. And my mom was like, how did she get your phone number? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Jen gave it to her. And she was just like, oh my God, blah, like, you know, just going off. And I was like, well, they're in town and they want to see me. They want to take me to like the mall or shopping or something. And my mom was like, no, you can't go. And I was like, Mom. And she was like, no. She's like, what if they try and take you again? And I was like, Mom, I'm 15 years old. I think I know the difference between driving home and driving to Mississippi. I said, plus also, I have a cell phone, so if anything feels off, I can call you. So she finally said, okay, because she knew. I was like, dude, I'm like, I want to go. They came, they got me, they took me to the mall. They ended up buying me, my grandma ended up buying me my first pair of Vans, because I wanted Vans so bad when I was in school. Wanted them so bad, and my mom would not buy them for me. So my grandma bought them for me. Then I also had like an unhealthy obsession with Victoria's Secret's Love Spell. Oh my God, I love that. I still love that stuff. I still buy it. Since that time, I have kept in touch with them on and off until present day. It sucks not being as close to them as I should be, because when I started this journey back in 2008, it was all because I wanted more family. And it sucks that my mom became so paranoid about my grandparents that she kept me hidden from them for so long. We moved so many times growing up, I couldn't tell you how many places we lived just within Pasco County. And I don't blame my mom, and I don't blame my grandma. It just sucks that I missed out on having more family to love me, who obviously really wanted me, because there were times growing up when I felt like my mom didn't want me, that she didn't like me because I reminded her of my dad. Like every time she looked at me, she would just see him. And every person that I talk to that knew my dad is like, you sound just like him, or you act just like him. Grandpa on the phone was like, you're a straight shooter. You're a no nonsense, straight to the point. And your daddy was just like that. It's so weird how it's so weird how you can have attributes from a person that you didn't even know. That's crazy that they would tell me that I sound or act or I say things that he used to say and do and all this, and I didn't even know him. I didn't know stories about him. My mother and I didn't get along. And a part of me thinks that if my grandma would have asked me at 15 if I wanted to come live with them, I probably would have said yes. You know, because it's between my mother not showing us love because that's how she grew up, you know, the same way. and her choice in men. Like, showing her kids love was something I knew that she physically couldn't do. And that's all I wanted, was to be wanted and loved. I can't speak for my brother and sister, but for me was to be wanted and to be loved. But that's the end of my dad's story. But we may have to come revisit it sometime in the future. But now the story begins of all my mom's other husbands and boyfriends. You know, exploring my dad's death is not over, but it is at a standstill right now, until I talk to his friends or get his military records, or if anything else pops up. But at the beginning, I was saying how I wanted to show how it affected me growing up, how I'm working through it, and how I'm moving on from it. So I'm going to answer those questions right now. So how did my dad's death affect me growing up? I spent a lot of time wondering who he was as a person, as a dad, as a brother, as a son. I just wanted to know him as a person. I just wanted to know him or know of him. I just wanted to hear some good memories about him, but all I was told was that he was an asshole. I spent a lot of time making up scenarios in my head about how good my life would be, or how different my life would have been if my dad was still alive, or if I went to go live with my grandparents. You know, anything could have been better than living with my mom. If it wasn't for my brother and my sister, I probably would have tried harder to end my life. Because I did try, but we will talk about that in another video. My mom and I did not get along at all. Like, we fought about everything. I will share the poem that I wrote about her that I still have. I was very much into Eminem because of my brother, and used to try and write like him. So, again, I said I found all my stuff from high school. So this is my metal notebook that is like rusting, but it still opens, and I'll move all the pictures. As you can see, it says it was written July 2nd, 2002. I was 17 years old when I wrote this, and she knows about it. I read it to her, and of course I got no response. So this is called The Bitch. The bitch is gonna get ass kicked or maybe hit. She needs to stop thinking everything's about her. I just want to kill her, but I won't, because I don't want to go to jail. Then while she's in hell, she'll hail, because I'm locked up. She needs to shut the fuck up, the instigator. I bet you she wouldn't want me to become better than her. She'd rather see me a whore, not have an attitude and do all her chores. She gets a check from me. I don't see none of that. Hell, I haven't eaten in 3 days. Got no stove, got no microwave. Hell, I don't even have charcoal to grill. She should just die. She's over the hill. She has put me through hell, blaming all her husband's deaths on me. Her not rolling in the dough. God, what a hoe. Everything's about her, all her. I don't have any money. I don't have a place to live. I'm behind on my bills. I don't have any food. She threw in my face that she's paying for my schooling. That's why she's behind on her bills. Damn the bills. Her kids should be more important to her than cigs and beer. Well, sorry, dear. Someday you'll hear. I won't live here anymore. Not gonna pretend like nothing happened. She can kiss my ass. She thinks she was a great mother. Please. Jen was more of a mother to me than Donna ever will. I hate her so much she needs to die. She won't be in the sky, she'll be in the ditch. That's where I buried the bitch. It was a cinch. Well, very little time will pass till I'm gone, and she'll wonder why I'm still gone. I don't want anything to do with the bitch, nothing at all. I was 17 years old when I wrote that. I was like, just over all of the bullshit. I was just over it all. So the next question, how do I follow up from that? Like, that should have been the ending. How am I working through my dad's death? Honestly, doing this research, like talking about him with Grandpa and my stepdad Sal, has been very therapeutic, because yes, it may have started out about my dad's death, but it turned into so much more. Like, my grandpa is not getting any younger, and when I call him and say, "Hey Grandpa, it's Michele," and he replies, "Hey there, sugar," it just gets me every time. And then talking with Sal, although technically he is not my stepdad, I was born after him and don't remember if I ever met him as a kid. But I mean, I probably did, but I don't remember it. I'm lucky I have that one memory from 2.5. But when we first connected on Facebook years ago, he was always so apologetic. Just like, "I'm so sorry, I wasn't there for you guys. You know, I should have been. I should have done more for you guys." And, you know, always telling me that if I need anything to call him. And those might be like small things, but they make like a really big impact. So now as an adult, I will always consider Sal my stepdad. I mean, this is the most I have ever talked to these people in my life, and I started learning more about them, and that they were interesting and amazing, and I just became very curious about them and how they lived their lives after separating themselves from my mother. How am I moving on from this? I think doing the research and asking the questions and talking to everyone has really helped sort out all the stuff that has been going on in my head my whole life. You know, nothing's gonna change. It's not gonna bring my dad back. If my mom was alive, she still wouldn't talk about it. So just making these videos and the blog post has just helped get all the junk out of my head. Sharing my story with those who may be going through or have gone through something similar just makes me want to keep doing what I'm doing. You know, this may have happened in my past, but this doesn't define me. I know I keep saying this, but just getting everything off of my chest has really lifted weight off of my shoulders. I can't wait for the day where I finally, get everything out and I just feel free. And that I can talk about it without crying. Like, you know, you finally really healed from something when you don't cry. And I've cried a lot these past 2 weeks. I know this has been long. I appreciate anyone who has watched till the end. I know these videos aren't cool or interesting with effects and music, but it's not about getting the views or being popular. This is to show you what real shadow work looks like. It's not fun. it's emotional. It's not glamorous. It's raw. It's gritty with a lot of highs and lows. My wish for anyone who is watching this video to know that at any age you can work through your bullshit and become a better person on the other side. Your past does not define you. It is what you learn from your past and what you do with that knowledge for your future. That is something that has taken me a long time to learn, but that's why I'm going through all of this. I want to go through it, get it off my chest, figure out what I am meant to learn from it, and apply that to my future so I can be a better person than my mom ever was. A better person than any person that was in my past. Any person who has brought me down, any person who is toxic in my life that I've gotten rid of. Like, I am doing this work to become better than them. And that is all I can ask for. But I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, please follow, share with your friends. But until next time, I will see you guys in my next video.